updates on sports stories across the globe, Aaron Akerijola joins us. Good morning, Aaron.
Yeah, good morning to you, Ayo. Good morning to you, Doctor. Good morning to you, Rufai.
Where's his under? Sorry.
Now, let's get it started. The Super Eagles played the Mambas of Mozambique yesterday. And finally, after 4 years, 4 agonizing years of not getting a win in friendly games, the likes of Terry Murphy, Onyeka, not forgetting Moses Simon, all turned up for the Super Eagles in that particular game. As the Super Eagles, for a second game in a row, had to come from behind to actually engineer a victory. The last time out against the Green Falcons of Saudi Arabia, it ended 2 apiece. But this time around, they were able to nick it, and the coach wasn't particularly pleased with that particular performance because he says the players lost concentration at some point in the game because the Mambas were down to 10 men at some point, and they were still able to get a goal back and made it very nervy for the Super Eagles, talking about the closing exchanges of this particular fixture. And away from that, let's talk about the fact that everyone seems to be pointing fingers at this man, Francis Uzor. Now, let's talk about the fact that it's unfortunate that the last pair of hands that was safe, Kali Keme, was diagnosed with leukemia back in the day, and he had to retire from football. Ever since then, it's been quite tragic for the Super Eagles in terms of goalkeepers because it's been a show of shame. This man has not covered himself in glory. In both friendly games, he has actually shown that he's not a safe pair of hands. Maduka Okoye himself, talking about another goalkeeper that was he's all beauty and not his beauty, not safety, because at the Nations Cup in Cameroon he fluffed his lines. At the World Cup qualifier against Ghana, he refused to rise to the occasion, and he was beaten by that solitary goal that ensured that the Super Eagles did not go for the World Cup in Qatar. So at the moment, everyone seems to be asking, what is going on? Are you trying to say that Nigeria cannot produce a goalkeeper in the ilk of the Ike Shoromus of this world, the Dodo Mayanas of this world, or even recently Vincent Yama of this world?
Which I think is the last real player safe for us, not Kali Keme, please. I'm sorry.
No, Kali Keme was good.
Would you respect?
No, Kali Keme was good.
Would you respect?
He might not have been at the level of Vincent Yama, without a doubt, but Kali Keme was a safe pair of hands. You don't need to be fantastic as a goalkeeper. All you just need to do is to do your job. And Kali Keme was okay at doing his job. So that is how things actually played out for him. But it's unfortunate that leukemia actually struck and he had to step aside. And at the moment, the battle to get a goalkeeper ahead of the Nations Cup, which will be kicking off next year in January, goes on. But let's move away from that and talk about the game that was suspended yesterday because of a terror attack in Brussels. The game between the Dragons of Belgium and Sweden was suspended. It was at halftime. They were playing 1-1 at halftime, and it was ultimately suspended. Of course, the good news is the fact that reports actually coming in this morning is that the perpetrator of that particular terror attack has been captured already. So good news on that particular part. But some people complained because they said fans had to be cooked up in the stadium till about 4 a.m. because the police and the authorities wanted to ensure their safety, and they were not entirely happy about that, having to wait. But of course, there were police escorts to actually move them away from the stadium back to the city. And at the moment, Sweden are saying, since Belgium have actually qualified, there's even need to actually replay this game. At the moment, it is unfortunate that all that is happening in the Middle East is actually spilling into Europe, so to speak, as we go on. Now, talking about the issues surrounding Israel and the rest of them, Algeria have stepped up and said every game that Palestine will be involved in the World Cup qualifiers, they are willing to foot the bills and also open themselves up to actually host those games. We'll be having a qualifier, or rather, Palestine will be having a qualifier next month, and they'll be hoping to actually host them, talking about Algeria, and everything that moves on from then onwards till things settle in Palestine. They've said they will be the ones hosting every Palestine game in Algeria. And finally, football royalties actually gathered for Lady Cathy Ferguson, who actually passed away as she was actually laid to rest in Glasgow, Scotland. Sir Alex Ferguson was married to this lady since 1966, and
She was his pillar.
yes, without a doubt, she was his pillar, and it's unfortunate that this actually happened. The likes of Kenny Dalglish, David Beckham, Gary Neville, quite a lot of people turned up to say or to pay their last respect to a lady who they knew was the calming effect to a man that was always on the verge of always losing control and always getting crazy sometimes, talking about Sir Alex Ferguson. He actually valued her as a companion over the years.
She was his treasure over the years. Real quickly, I want to talk about goalkeepers, Aaron. So I go back to my initial point. You might argue all you want. The safest pair of hands we've had in recent time is Vincent Iyama. And I'm going to tell you the solution to the goalkeeping thing. It goes back to looking inward, Aaron. We don't look inward enough. We like to go for all the fluff. No. See, the Nigerian team was battered after our episode in Malido Mildew, 2002.
Okay.
We had the World Cup to go to. We brought in Chief Onigbede himself. Then he looked inward. I remember the game when he introduced Iyama for the first time in the World Cup. A lot of people said, oh, he took some risk. Yes, and he paid out. That year, he brought in Iyama. He brought in the likes of Femi Okpabumi. He brought in other glowing stars. That formed a bulk of what the new Super Eagles was. Iyama was in Eyimba then when he kept a World Cup game for Nigeria. And you can see the ascendancy and sustainability. Over the years, Iyama could grow because there was an Adigboye Onigbede that went into the league and brought players like that out. Hitherto, you remember the Rufais of this world, the Kesho Rumors of this world. They were all in stationary stores. We looked inward and were able to get these goalkeepers out. The problem is, we have not looked inward enough.
Do we have the quality if you decide to look inward?
Even as at that time, we had massive quality. I'll give you
the level of play on the local league then and the level of play right now is quite different.
Even as at that time, you had the likes of Abiodun Baruwa Mualaja, like we used to call him, which was another very good pair of hands. By looking inwards, we had the likes of Dele Ayenuba. We can look inwards. Are you telling me, Aaron, that in this league, we can't get a safe pair of hands and grooming and giving exposure for the national? That was the only thing.
Now, Olorunleke Ojo was invited also, but people are still questioning if Olorunleke Ojo is...
Give him a chance.
Okay.
When Iyama was given a chance against England in 2002 World Cup, a lot of people were looking, who is this one? And he proved himself. And since then, he's been #1 in goal.
Okay. Well, just very quickly to pay tribute to Lady Cathy Ferguson, who was laid to rest. She met Sir Alex Ferguson when he was 23 years old, and they enjoyed a good marriage. In fact, her son, in paying tribute to her yesterday at St. Andrew's Church in Glasgow, had said that she, even though she didn't like football,
no, she didn't.
She supported him, and she was his, as he described, his tower of strength. I think it's just important to mention that we see the stars, especially when it comes to male football, and we often don't recognize, or even, I don't think many people knew about or heard about Lady Cathy. She really stayed. She never used to attend.
If you read,
I mean, like, in terms of in the news.
She was never in the limelight. She was never in the limelight. She didn't used to attend matches.
No, she didn't used to. So he would pay tribute to her, but in terms of her being at the forefront or taking, she was just happy to support. And he talked about, his son talked about how she was such a family woman, and so she kept the home front going while she was, leading. So Manchester United rightly paid tribute to her. And, a number of footballers, old and new, were there as well to pay respect. And just wanted to honor her this morning.
Nigeria has a football development plan, a 10-year plan. Where are we with that football development plan? Part of that, objective in that development plan for football is, in fact, to grow more talents, to revive the league. And if you don't do that, then you, of course, begin to see a downward trend in the quality of players, in the quality of midfielders, in the quality of goalkeepers. Now, don't forget that this 3-2 victory over Mozambique that we're celebrating.
Well, nobody's celebrating.
Well, some people are excited. They say it's a good development, even if the coach himself
is a step in the right direction.
Was saying that the attack wasn't sharp enough and they were not clinical enough in front of goal. Now he had to make 9 changes
Yes, it did.
To the team that played and drew with Saudi Arabia. So there's still a lot to be done in terms of deepening the quality of our players. And, you know, by developing all those leagues of those days that produce superstars locally, not now that we have to be looking towards Europe to get people. Ashley Plumtire, she stole the show yesterday when she made her debut with Al Ittihad women's team. She scored a hat trick, you know, and that's quite exciting. After a free transfer from Leicester City. Then your good brother, the last time Bender, he says he's taking a break from the UFC.
A much needed break.
Is it a sign?
A much needed break.
He's retiring.
Perhaps? He's lost it. He's lost it. He needs to realign. He needs to refocus and come back. Israel is heavily talented, but at the moment, maybe the success has actually probably imparted him in the wrong way. Who knows?
Right. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Always a pleasure.